Say, there's just the thing. My body is almost as flexible as a scarecrow's anyway. Marvel also has a scarecrow. You asked to hear about him, and we're doing it. It's time to meet Umberto, aka Ebenezer Lawton. Find out how there can be two scarecrows and watch this one battle against Iron Man. Oh yes, this scarecrow is going up against Tony Stark. Greetings comic lovers, and welcome back to Casually Comics, the channel where we chat all things comics, from reviews of comics new and old to history to anecdotes to really wherever our whims take us. Recently, at the time of this recording, we did a video on the Enchantress, a name shared by characters over at both Marvel and DC. However, those are not the only two characters who share a name. There are several. However, in the comments, the most prominent or most remembered, or the one people were most curious about, was the Scarecrow. Perhaps it's because these two are so extremely similar in design, so it makes you wonder. Now, scarecrows as an item and concept are old. They are part of agricultural tradition the world over. The classic scarecrow has a humanoid shape of some kind, and has long had connections with eliciting a primal fear. Part of their very nature is to be scary. It plays in the same realm as mannequins for some people, just something humanoid lurking there. It's eerie, that mounted figure that looks like it could just come at you. It's out of the corner of your eye and it looks like a person. Here are just a few scatterings of scarecrows from history. Cuz the Greeks carved wooden scarecrows in the image of Priapus, god of fertility, vegetables, genitals, and gardening. This was around 2500 BC or BCE. There are also references to a scarecrow in the oldest compiled book in Japan, the Kojiki, which is a collection and gathering of many oral traditions, and that includes folklore and myths. There, a scarecrow-like being is referenced, a kubiko, the Shinto kami of agriculture, a scarecrow who cannot move but who gathers wisdom. Nathaniel Hawthorne wrote a short story about a scarecrow in 1852 called Feathertop. In this, a witch brings one to life. All of this, aside from being fascinating, is to say that the scarecrow is a cultural concept worldwide. You can't trademark or copyright it, which does not stop out-of-control companies for trying things like that. And sometimes things slip through, but not the scarecrow. So the fact that there are two can be explained thusly. Another factor is timing. We discussed the disappearance of DC's Scarecrow, who debuted long before Marvel's in World's Finest Comics number 3 in 1941. However, after 1943, the character vanished for 24 years, reappearing in 1967, and he was a far cry from what the character has become after decades of work, story, and evolutions. The Marvel iteration of the Scarecrow appeared in Tales of Suspense 51 in 1964, so it is conceivable that some people forgot about the DC version. It had been a while. Or perhaps I'm being too credulous. Perhaps it was remembered, but it had been so long that perhaps a gap was seen. Now's our time for a Scarecrow. Which may also have prompted DC to dust off their version, since, well, they did do it first, so step off, I guess. Whatever reason, Marvel made a push, making Scarecrow part of their library. They made it happen, so let's take a look at this Scarecrow. Tales of Suspense. Anyone else would tremble in fear in the face of Iron Man's angry challenge, but not the Scarecrow. What strange power does he possess? Another triumph for the new Marvel age of comics. Okay, the hype is intact as normal. I am surprised that's not telling me that this is a collector's item. Also, spoilers, there are no really strange powers to be seen. Not in the sense that you may be thinking or imagining. Face to Face with the Sinister Scarecrow. Written by Stan When Does He Sleep Lee. Illustrated by Don When Does He Eat Heck. I know what they're trying to do. It's going for a wow, they love comics so much they just work on them all the time. But when you come from this perspective at the time of this recording and you're hearing about all the crunch and stuff behind the scenes, you're just worried. You hear someone's not eating, you're just like, quick, someone order a sandwich. The story opens with Iron Man chasing a thief who's robbing a box office, so he chases him inside the theater, but he has to find a way to stop him without hurting any of the bystanders. A contortionist looking for some publicity decides this would be a great use of his contortionist skills to stop the thief. This is the uncanny Umberto, later to be named Ebenezer Lawton, and helping Iron Man and getting thanked by him does not have the effect that some would anticipate. I suddenly realized I gained a lot more out of this than some fast publicity. You just handed me the inspiration of a lifetime. I could make a fortune by using my talent in other ways. I mean, you could, but it's still a lot of work, and it's not always the safest. Oh, you mean theft, robbery, yes. I could become the world's best burglar with my rubbery body and my knowledge of how to break locks and chains, and nothing could stop me. So I'll become a Scarecrow, the natural evolution of a contortionist and escape artist. This is where the whole I'm flexible like a Scarecrow panel comes from, although I'm not sure. When I think about Scarecrows, maybe floppy, but flexible isn't necessarily what comes to mind. In fact, a bit unyielding, kind of cumbersome and scratchy, uncomfortable looking. I mean, this sounds more like he should be the Ragman, but it was a Scarecrow costume on display, so that's what he steals. Look, when you're looking to be inspired by things that are around you, you've got to work with what's there. Scarecrow costume in the display window, bat flying through your window. Windows, the gateway to what your nighttime persona is gonna be. He then performs his most dastardly deed, in my opinion, stealing trained crows from one of his colleagues, saying he was going to retire soon anyway and he won't miss them. He took his bird friends. He's a monster, a true monster. These crows are top-tier, genius-level normal comic crows. He easily trains them to help him in his criminal lifestyle. But where to start a life of crime? Hey look, here's a picture of Anthony Stark. Anthony, it sounds so odd. You can't just drop the short form on us, Umberto. He says that with his playboy lifestyle, his apartment should be empty. And so now we need to learn the circumstances for why it's not. Brace yourself, check your posture. It's time for 1960s Marvel woman. Get some water and your protective gear because it's about to get stereotypical and catty. You may tell Mr. Stark that Veronica Vogue is here to see him, my good woman. Well, Pepper's not having that because Mr. Stark is her man, except he isn't really. So she tells Veronica that Mr. Stark forgot their date, and so she leaves in a huff. But Tony figures out that she did this pretty quickly, and he proceeds to not really care. Tony's all like, woman, am I right? Up top, 1960s Marvel. Something tells me that Veronica really was here. My jealous little secretary got rid of her. Actually, I don't mind. She was becoming a bore anyway. Yay, everyone's awful. Here's Pepper thinking about how Veronica wasn't even a natural blonde. I could tell by the dark parting in her hair that she really is not blonde. The curtains do not match the dress. Oh, help, I'm being sucked in. Help me, Iron Man. Scarecrow, someone, send help. Tony decides to go home and have a poker night with Happy. And so he happens upon the Scarecrow mid-theft. Happy tries to take him out since he was a boxer, but he's no match for a contortionist. But this distraction is all Tony needs to suit up. At this point, Tony was pretending that Iron Man was his bodyguard, and so people weren't surprised when Iron Man just suddenly showed up, even though they still should have been a little bit. This is where you may be wondering, how does a dude who's super flexible go up against a tech-based superhero? Someone in an armored weapons suit? Well, the answer is crows, trained crows. They drop the drapes on him and try to tie him up with tassels, all in command. Iron Man thinks he's left when he sees the crows fly out the window, but actually the Scarecrow stayed behind, which is a good play, only he forgot that Happy is still there. So he just grabs some things and he manages to get some blueprints and runs out. He's really excited actually because he's got some transistorized weapons blueprints. This means that they have transistors in them instead of vacuum tubes. That's right, Stark Industries has all the high tech. Say goodbye to vacuum tubes. At my command, little slaves, bring me the telephone now. I don't like this Scarecrow. Hashtag save the crows. The Scarecrow decides that he's going to extort Tony, or rather Anthony, by ransoming off these blueprints. Tony goes to pay him with a plan that he'll follow him as Iron Man after and try out some of these transistorized gadgets he's built into his suit. The Scarecrow decides that he's going to try to escape to Cuba and sell the weapons there. But that's not happening on Tony's watch. They fight, he throws the Scarecrow overboard and drills some holes in the boat so it sinks. But the Scarecrow's still trying to get away because he's still got crows. The best crows. The strongest crows. They're dragging him across the water towards Cuba. And you know what? They make it. This is because Iron Man was running low on power, and so the Scarecrow lives to scare another day or steal another day. You see, in no way was a regular man mismatched against Iron Man because he had crows. Caca! These crows need a union. This story was something. It's actually not bad. It's pretty fun. It even had a bit of a clever villain fake out at the beginning where you think that the villain is going to be the thief that Iron Man is chasing, and then it turns out to be Umberto instead, whose name I cannot say without adding some extra passion and oomph to it. Umberto! The idea of someone being inspired by doing something heroic towards villainy instead of good is an interesting one. It speaks to a complexity in Umberto that is not played out by the rest of the story. But there's an arrogance and narcissism there that's worth exploring. As for the Scarecrow motif, why? It doesn't really fit into Umberto's act as a contortionist. It's a bit of a reach. It does leave you with that slightly conspiratorial, we're trying to snatch up that sweet, sweet Scarecrow market. You know, all those people clamoring for Scarecrows. He's not a bad villain, but he does feel a bit mismatched against Tony. I mean, Anthony. The Scarecrow theme also doesn't fit him as well as Jonathan Crane, who has it tied into his appearance and is a snob about it and works the symbolism of the costume into his crimes. Inspiring fear, even when it's clunky in his early appearances, there's always a mention that he's trying to spread fear. And if you know about the two, you do tend to end up comparing them, just because they're so similar in name and look and why. This Marvel Scarecrow would change over time as well. His next appearance would see him switching heroes and going up against the X-Men, and then later Captain America, both times as part of teams. He would also get a sad, abusive family backstory, and he would even stick around long enough to get retconned. He would have a backstory where he was now inspired to become a villain because of the Mandarin, who would give him his costume and his super elite Crow Squad. He does come to feel different, but there is a bit of a derivative but why though vibe. At least if you're aware of the history, the fact that there are two of them, and of who came first. He's not even the only Marvel Scarecrow. In 1975, a heroic Scarecrow would be introduced, but he would later change his name to Strawman to avoid the negative connotations with this first villainous Scarecrow who was by this point killing people. He escalated from thief to murderer. So yes, Marvel has a Scarecrow. Questions, comments, concerns? Were you aware of Marvel's Scarecrow? Do you feel that he stands on his own or find him a bit derivative? Do you prefer Marvel or DC's Scarecrow? Both? Neither? Share all your thoughts down below, and while you're down there, please do all the YouTube things. Like, share, comment, subscribe, and hit the bell notification so that you never miss a vid. Thanks so much for taking some of your day spent discussing comics with me. me. I always appreciate it. I'll see you again soon. I almost forgot to wave again. Bye-bye.